everybody, in this episode of Cooking with Generoso and Lily. It's winter, or almost at least, and I'm going to be making Vietnamese beef stew, also known as bo ca. And so let's check out the ingredients. It's a one-pot dish, but there's a lot to add into this one pot. So we'll start with some of the spices. I have black pepper. I have this packet of bo ca seasoning. It's mostly just paprika and star anise ground up, but it is a nice base of seasoning, and you can get this really at any Asian grocery store. Just look for really beef stew spices and you should be all set. This is olive oil. We're going to end up using only about 2/3 of a can of tomatoes, but we have the whole can here. We are going to need some beef stock, then some cornstarch to thicken the stew, some fish sauce as always, some soy sauce, some oyster sauce, we have some cinnamon, and then some cayenne pepper, and then we have star anise. There are 2 of the stars. Here are 2 stalks of lemongrass. We're really probably only going to use 1 1/2 stalks. It's a big chunk of ginger. There's a lot of garlic. That's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. There's 12 cloves of garlic of various sizes. Then here's 1 whole onion. And there are 5 carrots. And then our glorious chunk of beef. This is a beef pot roast. It's probably a little over 2 pounds, I think. And we're going to cut that into bite-sized pieces. It's pretty lean, so we'll probably slice off a little bit of the fat, but you can, of course, leave this a little more fatty if you like. I prefer like beef stews that are a little bit more lean. So we're going to actually go in and prep everything. There's a lot of ingredients to prep this time around, and we'll see you in a little bit. Howdy everyone! So we've finished all the prep work for this, and let's check out and see what has happened. So lemongrass has been cut into these stalks. We're just going to throw them in. There are like almost like leeks in a way. They're like roots, so you can just throw them on in and they should be able to extract some of the flavor. Outside of that, Gina's nicely chipped the carrots. I very finely minced the garlic. I've sliced the ginger into these very fine shreds, and I have cut the onion into some pretty fine slices as well. And then Jean has cut all of the beef into bite-sized pieces. So now we are ready to start. So this pan has been heating.
Let me get behind you.
Yeah. So we're going to very liberally coat the bottom of the pan.
With the oil of olive?
Yes, with the olive oil. Now we're going to add in all the root vegetables and the garlic. And the ginger as well.
Ooh, careful.
Yeah. We'll add in the onion. Want to make sure you get all of it. These are going to be the base of the soup. Drop a pair of chopsticks. I'm going to let all this fry up until the garlic gets a little bit brown, and the onions as well.
I love the smell of these ingredients all mixed up together in a bucket.
Yes, they're also a really good base in general for any soup. Sometimes I'll replace the beef with tofu and then add in some veggies outside of the carrots. Like I've done it in the past with kale. And that also is a really just nice like hearty soup as well. You don't get the beef flavor, but it is just as good. And I think it's a really nice like lighter fall dish versus like beef stew is always really incredibly heavy. That's what I love about it, of course, but it is a heavy dish.
It is.
So the onions have started to brown a tiny bit, and the same with the garlic, and at this point, I'm going to add in our favorite friend, fish sauce.
And just a dab, right?
Yeah. This is probably a total of a teaspoon.
And at the most.
And as I always warn, it's always really strong when you add it to the pan.
Got a nice punch.
Alright. So at this point in time, I'm actually lemongrass stalks.
And you should say that in the past you've sliced up the lemon stalks in a small strip, but lemongrass, you have to remove it because it's hard now.
Yeah, it's very tough to eat. It's very, very difficult and tough to eat because of the fact that it's very hard. As you're cutting into it, you'll notice that it's like trying to cut into wood, which is really difficult. So you should use a really sharp serrated knife to cut your chunks. So I've left them in like stalks this time around because they're just going to be a lot easier to remove later on.
Great. Nice smell. Lemongrass adds a nice brightness to it, and then that mixed with the ginger, it's really sharp in here.
Yeah.
The smell.
Alright. Next, we're going to add in our beef.
I think after we cut it, it's still a good pound and a half at least. Well, this isn't a fatty dish, so there's some fat still on the key.
Yeah, there's a little bit because I think, you know, every beef stew should have some fat involved, a little bit, a tiny bit, but never like large chunks of fat, unless you prefer it that way. I grew up eating beef stew that was always a little leaner, but I know that there are folks out there who make their own version with fattier beef. It's kind of like tikka. You know, I use pretty lean pork for that dish, but other people will tend to use some pretty fatty pork. Alright, so while that is mixing, let's get some oyster sauce for good color. This is probably
Tablespoon.
about, I'm going to do a tablespoon and a half.
Okay.
There we go. And a tiny bit of soy sauce. Maybe just about half a tablespoon.
Sure.
Oh, I should open that.
I forgot that's brand new.
Alright.
Very nice. Temperature like on this right now, Lily? You can move the pot back.
Yes, this is on high.
Oh, it's very high.
It's on very high because I want to get all of the, exactly, I want the beef to be browned a little bit and I want the carrots to be braised a little bit.
Alright. So this is what you fondly call a one-pot dish.
Yes.
Everything is in a one pot. Obviously, you usually make this with rice noodles.
Yes, I do.
But this is actually just going to exist in this one pot, and it's a slow cooking item, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It'll cook probably for about 2 hours, and like any other stew, it gets better with time. So if you have more time, I welcome you to cook it even longer.
Very cool.
And this one could also be done in a, once you finish the actual base in a pot on a stove, you could actually complete the slow cooking process in a, like a pressure cooker or a crock pot. I just don't really like the flavor that comes out of a crock pot, so that's not my like desired choice of cooking, but it certainly is easier and you don't have to watch it nearly as much. So I understand why folks like it.
I hear that too.
So, at this time, you're going to add some cayenne. Pretty decent amount, probably about a teaspoon. And then a tiny bit of cinnamon. Just to add a little bit of water. I'm going to fry this on up. You'll notice the beef is nicely cooking through, the carrots are cooking, and the same with the onions and the garlic and the ginger too.
Hey, we know we've brought this up in the past, but I have to bring this up again. So you always prefer to use chopsticks for all your stirring. Like, you don't want to use any other kind of implement. Why do you prefer to use chopsticks?
Because they're flexible, I think is why, and I can do anything with them. Like, I don't ever have to change them out. I think that that's a big thing.
Sure.
I don't like changing utensils. I think if I only have to use a spatula or a spoon, I'm fine.
Right.
But I don't like changing things out. So, now we are going to open up our beef stew seasoning. Alright. And I'm going to put in about half of this packet.
Half of the packet? Ooh, very red.
Yeah. Very nice red.
Very cool.
Wait, that's actually a little less than half. It's probably about a third.
That's a really intense odor. It's great though.
Yeah, it's really strong.
For those sitting at home, it's I guess I describe it as like it's paprika, no?
It's paprika and it's anise.
Right.
And black pepper and also probably some nutmeg as well.
Yeah, I smell that now too. It's really, really pretty. You know, our limitations, of course, to our video device. If you could actually see how, like, blood red it is right now, it's got a really intense blood red color. And we haven't even added the tomatoes yet.
No, which is actually what is going to be. Now we're going to add our tomatoes. This is going to be 2/3 of a can of tomatoes.
Very nice.
And I'm going to rinse it out just to put a little bit of water in it.
I bet it's 1/3 of a can of water. Perfect.
And that'll just loosen up some of the tomatoes.
Great.
And now this stew is very red.
And again, now that the beef is cooking down, that smell is entered into the equation. And it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a dish that really does smell really great. Will make your house smell really nice too. Alright, and at this point in time, we can add the beef stock. I'm going to add probably about 1.5 cups. Just to thin this out a little bit.
Excellent.
And now, we'll stir this on up. And with all this extra liquid, the flavor is going to be able to steep out of the lemongrass, so this is going to get really, really like fragrant and delicious.
Does this dish, I assume that eventually you're going to take it down the flame a little bit.
Yep.
Down the flame. How often does it need to be stirred over the 2 hours? About every 15 minutes, or?
Yeah, about every 15 to 20 minutes. It's good to check on it, and it's also good to check the level of liquid on it. Like, if it's getting to be too thin, then you can add more beef stock, or you can add a little bit more water. And if it's not too thin, just keep on stirring, and you can also take the lid off.
Great.
Or you should say, if it's not too thick, you can take the lid off.
Very nice.
So that's the beginning part, and now we're going to just add in the 2 other nice spice components, and these are the star anise. We'll just throw it right in. Remember, before you serve, please take out the star anise.
Yes, they're basically food throwing stars, aren't they?
Yes.
They'll go right into you.
They'll go right into you.
It's like a bay leaf.
Exactly.
Chop you up. So yeah, the flavor is wonderful, but you're right, it is a treacherous spice.
Yes. So I'm just going to make sure that the star anise is coated.
Fantastic.
And make sure that the lemongrass stalks are hanging out a little under the surface. And I'm going to put the lid on this now. And we'll turn this heat down to probably like a medium low. Like right around here.
Alright, great.
And then we'll let it cook for 2 hours, and we'll see you back again. Right, howdy everyone. It's been 2.5 hours since we saw you last.
She was not kidding.
And this beef stew has been stewing. It's this beautiful like red-orange color, and the smell is really intense. Our kitchen has a smell of kind of anise and a lot of lemongrass right now, which is never a bad thing. And so I've made rice noodles already. This is normally how I serve it. You can serve it all kinds of ways. The most traditional way to serve it is like with very crusty French bread. It makes sense. And then outside of that, sometimes people will also serve it with egg noodles. I personally like it with rice noodles, so that's the way I normally serve it in this house. And so now this has been pulled off of the flame. Flame is off, and has been cooling for a little bit. And I'm just gonna scoop some straight on top of my rice noodles. Be careful in terms of scooping any like big stalks of lemongrass or the star anise. Remember, those 2 are still in here. But the sauce is nice and thick and been cooked down. Get a couple of chunks of extra beef. You'll see that there are big pieces of ginger in here. That's the way I like it.
I love it.
But again, you see the pieces of ginger, but they are thinly shaved in some ways, so they're never going to be too overpowering. There are some beef stews that actually have huge chunks, and you'll get served the huge chunks. I never like that. I kind of like to make sure everything gets incorporated. But we have scooped the beef stew on the noodles, and that's it. This is my version of bok ha. Enjoy!